All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about a single point in history that didn't just change a religion, no. This moment completely redrew the map of Europe, and really it changed how we even think about what it means to believe something for yourself. And it all boils down to one guy.
Just one monk, wrestling with his faith in a quiet little German town. One hammer, and it wasn't even for something dramatic. Not really. He was just nailing a piece of paper to a church door. Think of it like a community bulletin board today.
And then 95 points. That's all they were supposed to be. 95 arguments he wanted to debate with other scholars.
But those 95 sentences, they ended up being the hammer blows that shattered an entire world order. Seriously, they cracked the very foundation of medieval Europe, and we're still feeling the echoes today.
Okay, so to really get why this was such a huge explosion, you've got to understand the world he was living in. Back in the early 1500s, you didn't have a choice of churches in Western Europe. There was the church, and it wasn't just a spiritual thing, it was a political and economic empire.
I mean, just look at this. The church's control was total. Faith wasn't about your personal feelings, it was the law. And if you had doubts, that wasn't just a crisis of faith, it was a crime called heresy. The Pope had the final say on everything, and your very salvation, your ticket to heaven, was something the church handed out. They held all the keys.
And that leads us to this big one, indulgences. So what were they? Basically, the church said you could pay money to shorten the time you or your dead relatives spent in purgatory. Now, for a deeply religious guy like Martin Luther, this was a huge problem. It looked like the church was literally selling forgiveness. And in his mind, forgiveness was a gift from God, something you could never, ever buy with cash.
Yeah, and this quote right here gets to the absolute heart of it. Luther had come to believe, through his own study of the Bible, that being saved, what he called justification, was a free gift from God. You get it through faith alone. You can't earn it by being a good person, and you sure as heck can't buy it. For him, this wasn't some minor theological point. This was everything.
So with this burning conviction, what does he do? Well, he does what professors do. He calls for a debate. He just wanted to talk about it. Little did he know, he was about to light the fuse on a powder keg.
And just look how fast things went off the rails. It all starts in October 1517, with him just wanting to have an academic discussion. But by 1520, the Pope himself gets involved, issuing this official order, a papal bull, basically telling him to shut up or get out. And Luther's response? He burns it. In public. I mean, can you imagine? By early 1521, that's it. He's excommunicated. He's officially an enemy of the church.
So you might be wondering, why did this protest catch on when so many others had been stamped out? One word: technology. The printing press was still pretty new, and it was a total game changer. It took Luther's ideas and just blasted them all over Germany, and then all over Europe. It was like they went viral. We'd never seen anything like it.
All right, so at this point, we're way past a simple debate about theology. This is now a full-blown confrontation. It's one man, Martin Luther, versus the two most powerful men in his world, the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor.
So in April of 1521, Luther gets a summons. He has to appear before the Diet of Worms. And no, that's not what he's eating. Diet was the name for the Imperial Assembly, kind of like their parliament. And the emperor himself, Charles V, is running the show. This is it, the ultimate showdown. And the charge? Heresy. The punishment for that was death by fire. And everybody there knew the story of Jan Hus, a reformer from about 100 years earlier. He was promised he'd be safe, went to a council just like this, and they burned him at the stake anyway. So yeah, Luther knew exactly what he was walking into. His life was absolutely on the line.
So picture the scene. Luther's standing there, a pile of his own books on a table in front of him, and the prosecutor basically asks him one simple question. Are these your books, and are you going to take back what you wrote? The entire future of the Reformation and Luther's life hangs on what he says next.
And this is his answer. It's one of the most powerful, most famous declarations in history. He says, essentially, unless you can prove me wrong using the Bible, I can't take anything back. My conscience is bound to the Word of God. And then he says those legendary words, here I stand, I can do no other, God help me. Just wow. Well, the emperor did not like that answer. The verdict came down fast. Luther was declared a heretic, an outlaw. This thing called the imperial ban meant anyone, anywhere, could kill him on sight with zero legal consequences. It was basically a continent-wide death sentence.
So how on earth did he survive this? Well, he had a very powerful and very smart protector, a guy named Frederick the Wise. Now, Frederick's reasons were complicated. He was partly protecting the star scholar from his university, partly sticking it to the emperor, and partly he just believed in a fair trial. So he came up with this brilliant plan. He staged a fake kidnapping. He had his men grab Luther on the road home and whisk him away to a secret castle to keep him safe.
But Luther wasn't the kind of guy to just sit around in hiding and wait things out. Nope. The time he spent locked away would lead to maybe his most revolutionary work of all.
He's hidden away in this place called Wartburg Castle. He's grown a beard, he's pretending to be a knight. And what does he do? He takes on this massive project. He translates the entire New Testament, not into fancy scholarly German, but into the everyday language that normal people actually spoke.
And it's hard to overstate how huge this was. Before Luther, the Bible was basically locked away. It was in Latin, which almost nobody could read, and priests were the gatekeepers. After Luther, suddenly the book was open. It was in German. For the very first time, regular people, farmers, merchants, housewives, could read the scriptures for themselves.
The ripple effects were just massive. I mean, his Bible translation was so popular, it literally helped shape the modern German language we know today. It gave all these different German-speaking regions a single common text, which helped build a sense of being German. But the biggest thing, it sent the message that you, the individual, could have a direct relationship with God. You didn't need a priest as a middleman anymore.
So in the end, what started as one man's personal struggle with his faith blew up into a revolution that changed a whole continent. It kicked off the Protestant Reformation, which split the Christian world in two. And yeah, it led to terrible wars for sure. But it also planted the seeds for so many of our modern ideas about freedom of thought and individual liberty.
And that brings us to a question that's just as real today as it was 500 years ago. Martin Luther figured out what truth he was willing to risk everything for, and he stood his ground against the most powerful empire on earth. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What truth would you stand for, even if it meant facing down the biggest authority in your world?